Participants, my name is Chesa Boudin. I'm the former district attorney of San Francisco and the founding executive director of the Criminal Law and Justice Center at UC Berkeley School of Law. And we're really thrilled to be able to bring this webinar to our local law enforcement partners here in California. Huge thank you to kick off the conversation to Yanina Lipara, from whom you'll be hearing later and who helps run the Criminal Law and Justice Center. Also, of course, a big thank you to our experts from Interpol, to CEO of Peregrine, Nick Noon, who's with us today, and to Commander Healy from the Sassoon Police Department for helping make today possible. I know from my work in law enforcement and from our research and partnerships with local government agencies at Berkeley Law School that AI is part of all of our lives, and it's part of your work, whether or not your agency has a formal policy in place. And the question that we're hoping to explore with all of you today is not whether to use AI and other emerging technology, but rather how to use it well in ways that advance your mission, promote public safety, build trust between your agencies and the communities that you serve and protect. That's why we partnered with Interpol for this conversation. Interpol has done serious, practical, leading-edge work to develop a framework to help law enforcement agencies evaluate and govern AI responsibly, even as these technologies continue to evolve and emerge. We think Interpol's experience carries valuable lessons that are directly relevant to agencies here in California and across the United States. Antonio Farello from Interpol's Responsible AI Lab will walk us through that framework and what it looks like in practice. We're also fortunate to have Commander Daniel Healy, who will bring a grounded law enforcement perspective on what oversight, trust, and accountability actually mean on the ground, and what questions agencies should be asking before and after they deploy AI tools. Particularly critical as you think about negotiating contracts, working with civilian oversight committees to develop protocols and accountability. All of these steps and processes require intentionality, and he's going to help us bring experience and purpose to that process. From the industry side, Nick Noon, the co-founder and CEO of Peregrine, will share how those principles translate into real procurement and deployment decisions. Our own Yanina Lipara, who leads our AI and law enforcement initiative at the Criminal Law and Justice Center, will tie these threads together from a California national and international perspective. She brings over a decade of experience working with the courts across Europe. This webinar is really a first step, and our goal is to continue this work with a hands-on training in person here in California next year. We'll be inviting folks from all of your agencies and across the country to join us for a process of putting the pieces together, building a framework, and figuring out how we can build safer, stronger, tech-forward communities together. So with that, I'll go on mute and again, echo my thanks to all of our participants for joining us and lending their expertise today.
Thank you so much, Chesa. Thank you for the introduction and for taking the time also to be here with us. We are moving to Antonio Farello. Antonio, please show us your great work.
Thank you. So I think I'm not sharing the right screen.
It takes a little bit of time, but we're getting there.
I'll try again.
We are in this webinar to actually show that technology can also be difficult. So this is already something that we're experiencing every day.
Not sharing?
Not from my end.
I don't know, it says it's paused. We just tried and it was okay.
Yes, we did the testing a couple of times, but it's always the moment where it has to work out that it doesn't.
I have another thing that is I'll disconnect and connect again. So
Okay,
sorry for
okay.
this,
No worries, Antonio, please.
because I don't know.
If you need me to jump in, you need, I can go out of order in a minute.
Yes, maybe we can start. We wanted to build on what Antonio was going to be presented from the work of Interpol, but since your presentation is also very memorable, maybe we can also start with that one if it doesn't work now. Antonio, do you think we start with Dan first then? And we try to solve the sharing? You're muted.
Better to start with Dan.
We can start Dan with you if
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
okay, Anton. Okay. Yes, we have Dan sharing the screen. We can start with Dan, and then Antonio, we make
I'll
sure
try to
that
fix it. Okay.
in the background we fix it. Thank you so much, and thank you also to my colleague Ella that is trying to solve the issues also from our team and working with Antonio. If Antonio you cannot share it, Ella can share it for us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dan. It will be great also to hear more from your background and how you find yourself dealing with AI.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for the patience. Obviously, technology is unpredictable sometimes, and that may be a running theme throughout this process. While we depend on it and we use it in our everyday lives, we have to continually evaluate it and work with it. And I think we're all just accustomed to being flexible, especially through COVID. We learned to be patient with the mute button and, develop these skills. But thanks for having me. I'm Dan Healy. I'm a commander with Suisun City Police Department, which is a small-sized police department in Northern California between Sacramento and San Francisco. And I am involved with AI through the California Police Chiefs Association Technology Committee and also with the Gov AI Coalition, which is a group of government employees from all sorts of different departments across government service and NGOs, and then also vendor partners. And so it's a unique opportunity at the Gov AI Coalition to work together directly with the vendors and then with other practitioners to see what's going on with AI and how it's quickly changing. My main interest is obviously in policing application of AI, and policing has specific challenges that other departments don't face, and primarily in the areas of trust and legitimacy and community engagement, where if you implement some sort of new permitting software, the city may not have any sort of interest in that, but if we launch some sort of police technology, there will definitely be additional interest in that for obvious reasons. So that's the perspective I come from. Uh, this is just a classic dragnet. I started my career at Los Angeles Police Department, so I have a soft spot for them. And just to show that times have changed and policing used to be a lot different than it is now. Looking back, it's obviously obvious to see all the changes that incrementally happened. But as we lived through it, it didn't feel like these monumental changes were occurring. And so agencies are asking, are we an AI agency? Do we have AI products? What AI products do we have? What do they do? And the spoiler is that we all are an AI organization now, because anybody that is using any of these products that we use every day, Google, Grammarly, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or Copilot, they're all AI-based systems. And so in policing, the danger exists that people use these publicly available solutions that you may not have approved in what might be called the shadow AI, and expose your sensitive data, specifically people's personally identifiable information, criminal information, and those kind of things into public domain systems where the data is not safe. So that's what we want to work with the vendor partners to build enterprise solutions that are more secure. We all know the reason that I titled this Clouded Judgment is because everything now is in the cloud and all of the data is stored in the cloud. And there is no cloud, it's just somebody else's computer. So all of your information is stored on somebody else's computer. And the judgment comes in with AI and how it changes from traditional police technologies that just store data and categorize. So the initial push, obviously, to police technology was just to digitize records. We have voluminous records in policing on the ground at the local level, and to be able to digitize those records, to be able to more easily query them, to find crime trends, to find repeat offenders, to identify all those things, there's a push to digitization. But the layer that AI introduces into the conversation is the judgment, where historically the technologies that we procured didn't actually give any input into the outcome of what you had. It just was holding it like a file cabinet. But now it can actually give you recommendations and summarizations and point you in a direction that you may not have otherwise gone. And that's where some of the risks from AI and policing come from. There's potential now for crime scene reconstruction and composite sketches to be done through AI. So this is where technology would actually be using algorithms to create evidence or items that might be used in an investigation. And obviously all those efficiencies, which make it more affordable to make those things happen, come with a risk of exposure or getting it wrong. So those are the challenges that AI produces with us. And the judgment is the main thing. We're all being asked to do more with less. Policing in California specifically, I look at it through that lens because that's where I operate and that's where I'm knowledgeable at, is expensive and it's ever increasing, it seems. And then there's pressure by cities and counties to reduce the budgets, especially during times like now when the economy may not be thriving. So then there's additional budget constraints and more pressure to put on to keep up the service delivery with less people or staffing. And so AI offers a solution that many city managers or executives see as a way to save money, but they're not thinking about how the implementation might expose their agency to some sort of public scrutiny or damage unintentionally. The additional risks associated with AI and policing is cognitive offloading and skills erosion, and I think that exists in every industry, but specifically for us, when the AI becomes so accurate and so convenient, it's easy to just trust the product that is created by the system and not to ask the basic questions that we normally would in an investigation if we were faced with evidence. So these risks of personnel, especially your new hires that are starting now in this age, trusting systems to return answers to them, can erode the skills that were established over time when all of us were trained and developed throughout history. So I think we need to take cautious steps to, train the tools and put in the guardrails to make sure they're being used appropriately, but also training without the tools. Like, for instance, when the webinar is not working right, you just have to be able to adapt and just keep providing service to the community, right? So it is a efficiency, but we have to be cautious. So this is the crux of my involvement in everything, is how does AI affect the workflow in policing, and how can we apply what we've always done? I've been a police officer in California for 23 years, and what have we always done that would actually apply to this? And so healthy skepticism, verification, context, and judgment. We're always good at second guessing each other and community and those things, and being cautious and skeptics. And that applies to AI. Those are valuable tools to put the inputs in, put in your prompts, and receive whatever output you get, but to be skeptical that it may be inaccurate, or there may be some reason why this information that you received is not what you expected or not correct. And that goes to verification. where you're actually using, historical policing tools like follow-ups and corroboration and, timelines and additional physical evidence to establish that this person is in fact the person that committed the crime that you're looking for. And then the context, the AI may not have the context of what you know, so there may be some nuance or some industry specific, clue that this is not accurate. And that's what we all bring to the table as subject matter experts to evaluate what the prompts are returning and see what we can do to evaluate them. And then clear judgment, really, right? We are trusted as policing professionals to be the ones that are responsible for the investigation. So if the investigation goes wrong by the use of an AI tool, it's likely going to be our fault for using it in the wrong way or just trusting the system or, something like that. So leads, a lot of AI companies will talk about lead generations, and a lot of AI products create leads, from automated license plate readers to shot detection to surveillance cameras. They all capture things going on in your community and create leads of who may or may not be involved in the crimes in your community. But like any lead, it should be evaluated and documented and verified and confirmed. And where agencies have gotten into trouble with the use of AI is in cases where they didn't do those steps after the lead was generated. So we owe it to ourselves as an industry and then also the community, and to create public trust by following these steps, being methodical and not jumping to conclusions, and letting this technology cloud our good judgment and our police capabilities. So as far as constitutional policing, obviously AI, like anything, is a two-sided coin where it can cause benefits and it can cause negative things. So it could create more objective review of evidence and identify weaknesses or contradictions in your case. And it would offer a more accurate, less emotional, logical perspective. So that is a potential advantage of AI in constitutional policing, is that the robot doesn't have any emotion or investment in the outcome of the case, so it would look at it just objectively. But conversely, report writing systems or AI systems may find facts that were not known at the time. So for instance, a major concern is that an officer doesn't have probable cause or a specific legal reason to conduct a search or something like that. And later the AI report writing system is writing a report identifying reasons why there was probable cause or why there was a reason for detention or a search. And if the officer didn't know it at the time and the system is creating it after the fact, then it's reverse engineering the initial stop, which, with the fruit of the poisonous tree, the whole court system gets eroded if that's what's happening. So we don't want the system to be enhancing or finding facts that we didn't otherwise identify with our investigation. It could obviously create the leads and point us in a direction, but we don't want it to come in after the fact and clean it up. So for procedural justice, again, AI has positives and negatives. It definitely can provide a second set of eyes, auditing your outcomes, and perhaps giving your community a more independent viewpoint of what you're doing in all your processes. And depending on where you apply the AI technology, it can provide additional protections. It can also allow people to be heard, to be transparent, and also could improve community engagement and connection with the community. So on the negative side, of course, if it's creating artificial evidence or hallucinating, then it's going to be damaging to the trust of the community. So the way that I look at it is that an AI system is kind of like a rookie officer who has the knowledge of the policies and the training that they received at the academy. They know how to write a report. They know law, basic law, and elements of the crime, but they have never applied it. They don't know the nuances or the pitfalls that can happen to someone that is policing in a community. And so that's your job as the established veteran, knowledgeable staff that you are to come and make sure that the systems are working as expected, auditing the systems, that we're being transparent, that we have a human in the loop with oversight as to the results of the AI systems, and ensure that it's delivering what we wanted. The vendors want to deliver a good product, and they actually want feedback if the product's not performing the way as expected. And that's our job to hold them accountable both pre-procurement and after the fact if we determine that systems aren't acting as we expected. So these are just a series of places that AI will help improve policing, which detection recognition, basically like the ALPRs and ShotSpotter, training and analysis, education like the university system is adapting to AI just like we are. You can provide training 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can provide customized training in short snippets, the TikTok-ification of training where you get small pieces of it, but it tracks your training over time. You can also evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of training a lot better to see how the training could be improved. You could have real-time feedback if the class is retaining this. Like for now, imagine that I could be receiving real-time feedback about what you are and aren't understanding from this presentation, then I could on the fly or after the fact improve it. And all that helps us to hone our training in and make sure that the officers are receiving the actual information that we expect them to get. For calls and communications, translation services, non-emergency calls, there's a lot of push for dispatch, investigation reporting, report writing, and going through data like Peregrine, I'm sure we'll talk about, and administrative support and functions, hiring, early interventions, review of officer use of force pursuits and complaints versus their peers. All those things are areas where AI might help us to intervene to make sure that somebody is well. They're not going through some personal struggle or some other situation that is otherwise, exposing them to be more risky in the street. And reducing bureaucratic and linguistic barriers overall. Like everybody likes to say, it shouldn't take 5 months to get a work permit for your house. It shouldn't take, forever to get your police report back. You should be able to do it 24 hours a day with a couple of clicks. And we're working towards that. Those are all positive things that AI can bring to policing. And I think if implemented correctly, it could help in a lot of areas. These are just a couple of quick cases, and I'll blaze through this to get to the other speakers, but these are kind of AI gone wrong. So this was in Maine, and a police department posted an Instagram photo that was altered by the officer. Then there were some issues of trust about, if this evidence was altered. It wasn't. This case of Williams versus the city of Detroit is the kind of landmark ACLU case about facial recognition, where Mr. Williams was wrongfully arrested off the use of facial recognition. In this case, the officers didn't take those investigative steps to corroborate that he was the one that committed the crime. This is about the courts and district attorneys submitting legal briefs with AI just recently, and this goes to show how police and the personnel are still part of this issue. Flock has been in the news for lots of other reasons, but Milwaukee officer misused the system to run his girlfriend through the Flock system. And then in Kansas, a police chief used the Flock license plate camera 164 times to track his ex-girlfriend. So in this case, the technology didn't have the error. It was the users and the auditing. And I think it's a fair question, especially like in this case as an example of, if the chief of police is the one that's misusing the system, then how is it being audited and by who? And I think that does rely on the vendors to create some sort of a warning system where if one user is querying, say, the same license plate 164 times, that somebody uninvolved gets an alert to go audit and see what that is, whether that's your civilian oversight committee or your city manager or whoever it is, because none of us are above, being responsible to this. So I'll wrap it up by saying that AI applied to policing. I applied it to the 6 pillars of 21st century policing. And how can we get better? This is a nice drone photo of our city. And so that's some technology that we have now, DFR. A lot of cities have drone as a first responder, and it allows us to get on scene quicker and assess the situation and keep the officers safer, keep the community safer, potentially de-escalate by having additional time and information before we get to the call. But for trust and legitimacy, the community really wants to know what you have and how you're using it. And each community is a little different. So what is wanted by one community may be different from the other. I think when Interpol does the presentation, Europe has a much more overarching policies and procedures. And in the United States, we don't. In California, we have some specific state laws that apply to ALPR use and AI report writing, but we're all adapting to this new technology kind of on a regional or state by state basis. And that's what with the GovAI Coalition and our involvement with Berkeley and the other organizations is to try and get some kind of national momentum to establish some common sense guardrails and at least just a baseline training of what we can do for our people to be familiar with AI literacy and what biases may exist. So auditing capabilities, risk assessments, pre-procurement and after, and clear policies. You may or may not have a AI policy if you're in California. If you're a Lexipol customer, you probably do have one. If you don't, then you probably need to get one. But whether you have a policy or not, you, like I started with, you have this technology in your organization. And so you need to get with the people and the supervisors and the managers of your, not just police department, but city leadership to say, what are we going to do with AI? Not will we adopt it, like Chessa said, you are adopting it. It's just how do we do it? How do we do it safely? What have we communicated? How have we trained? And what are the expectations of our people? So community policing and crime reduction, obviously AI can help a great deal with community engagement. People are doing a lot of interactions, social media, and those kind of products with AI products. And real-time response, like I talked about with the DFR, the drone, as a first responder, real-time response not only gives more public safety to the victims and quicker response times, but it also does increase the safety to the suspects and other people that may be on scene because the officer will get more accurate real-time information about what's happening rather than whatever the caller said before they hung up. So it is helpful to have that real-time information happening and help us develop what are the root cause analysis, where are we going, why are we always going there, what are the problems, what can we do either through environmental design or city planning or programming or whatever it is, resources, what can we do to try to reduce crime through this, through our analysis of all the data. Training and education, this is what GovAI Coalition and specifically we're working on is upskilling officers, which is to develop your AI knowledge, which hopefully you get some takeaways from this today, increasing AI literacy and familiarization, and to make people informed about the emerging AI victimization trends. There's lots of fraud and scams and the response that, I'm sure everybody's got the Autobot texts and calls and all those things can be automated and they just need one or two people to click on it. It's the law of big numbers. And the AI has really armed people with that. As far as government agencies and exposures, California has seen an increase in ransomware and those kind of attacks through AI. They said generally the state OES, Office of Emergency Services, was estimating it used to take 48 hours for an intrusion to take ransomware, and now it's about 36 minutes because of AI. So there is AI being used by bad actors, and that's another area that our people need to stay familiar with. And then officer wellness and training, I kind of touched on it, but real-time response keeps them safer, situational awareness, and methodical decision-making. Anybody that's spent any time in the field knows that when you have time, you're much more likely to make a better decision or a more clear decision or a more informed decision. But when you're rushed or hurried and you have to just get to the decision, then you don't have many options. So all this information overload can be processed through the use of AI, but there does need to be guardrails because communities do expect us to explain what we're doing, to understand what's happening, how we're using this, and how it helps, and what we can do to be accountable to not only the community, but to each other as an industry, and how we can all keep ourselves safe and our people safe. So bottom line, this is my people at the Torch Run at Sassoon City, and we're just out serving the community like everybody else, and we're using AI tools just like you are, but together we can all work together. And I would encourage anybody that's interested in getting involved in the GovAI Coalition, you can go onto their website and register. It's through the city of San Jose, and just stay informed and attend webinars like this. And I thank Berkeley and Interpol for having me, and I'll pass it back to Yanya.
Thank you so much, Dan. As AI is new for us as well, it is new for the community, so it's very important also to keep that into mind. And I will take the opportunity now to reintroduce Antonio. Antonio, please tell us a little bit more about your background and the work you're doing at Interpol.
Okay, let's see now if it will be working. I hope so. Okay, I'm going to share the. Sorry, because we don't use Zoom, and I'm not used to Zoom.
No worries. Otherwise, we already
now,
have your presentation, so we can share it. There it works.
Is it okay?
It is fine.
Okay.
We're seeing the screen when you put the slideshow. We're going to see now the slideshow as it should be shown, and you have to click continue to share. Yes.
You can see the screen. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So let's try to catch up the time. Okay. My name is Antonio Farello. I'm the Innovation and Technology Officer at the Innovation Center from Interpol. The Innovation Center is based in Singapore, but I'm based here in Lyon, France, at the headquarters of Interpol. So in today's session, I will walk you through the toolkit for responsible AI innovation in law enforcement. That is a practical structure framework that will help the law enforcement agencies to adopt the artificial intelligence technologies in a responsible way. So responsible AI innovation is not built only on technology. It's also built in these three interconnected pillars. The first one is human rights law, by the international and national legal frameworks that made law enforcement to respect the fundamental rights and freedoms of people in all the policing activity without any exception. Then you have the second pillar is ethics, that is about the moral principles and the professional standards in police that go behind the minimal legal compliance, and that will guide us through all that is not merely permitted, but that is right and just. And then finally, the third pillar is good policing principles. The established best practice in our profession of police officers that prioritize the community trust, that is very important, proportionate response to the threats, the public accountability. So together, these three pillars, they are the foundations, and they synthesize all the principles for the responsible AI innovation that I will talk you in the few next slides. So the AI toolkit is a set of 7 design resources. Each one is serving a different function in supporting the law enforcement agencies through the process of implementing responsible AI in your agencies. The toolkit is divided in 2 different categories. The first one is the guidance documents and supporting documents that has the introduction to responsible AI innovation, the principles for responsible AI innovation, the organizational roadmap, and the technical reference book. And then the second category that has the practical tools, the risk assessment questionnaire, the organizational readiness assessment questionnaire, and the responsible AI innovation in action workbook. I will talk briefly about these resources. So to help the law enforcement agencies to navigate the toolkit in an effective way, we recommend this 4-stage pathway. You start by learning, like reading the introduction and the principles documents to get you familiarized yourself with the key concepts, with the technical terminologies and the ethical standards that underpin the responsible AI innovation. You then move to assessing readiness, that you're going to complete the organizational readiness assessment questionnaire in order to obtain an honest and structured picture of where your agency currently stands. So this is not a contest to see who is more developed than the others. You need to make an honest assessment to see what are the gaps and the needs when you're going to try to implement new technologies. And finally, the third stage is assessing risk. Running the risk assessment questionnaire for each specific AI project your agency is considering to implement or that is already in place. And finally, you act. You're using the Responsible AI Innovation in Action workbook across the full project life cycle, planning, procurement, operational use, and the monitoring of the technologies. So at the heart, this is the most important part of all the AI toolkit. At the heart of the entire toolkit are these 5 core principles. These are the standards against which every AI decision, every system, and every deployment must be measured. The first principle is lawfulness. So AI systems deployed by law enforcement, they must operate strictly with the established legal frameworks. It needs to respect constitutional rights, data protection legislation, and due process requirements at every stage of the life cycle. The second one is minimization of harm. Agencies, they have a proactive obligation to identify and mitigate potential harms before they materialize, ensuring that the AI systems, they don't generate disproportionate risks to individuals or to certain communities. Then the third is human autonomy. Meaningful human oversight must be maintained over all decisions that you take. AI is a tool that should augment human judgment. It must never replace it in matters that will affect the individual rights, liberty, or their safety. The fourth one is fairness. The systems, they must be rigorously tested and continuously monitored to prevent discrimination and bias, in order to ensure that there is a equal treatment across all demographic groups, no matter of the race, gender, or social economical status. Finally, the fifth one is good governance. It must be in place transparent oversight mechanisms, clear accountability structures in order to explain every step, and the robust documentation practices must be in place and maintained throughout the entire life cycle of the AI system. These 5 principles, they must guide the AI activities from the first conversation that we have inside your agency about the potential system, AI system, all the way through the deployment and into ongoing operation. Must be present in every stage. Then I'm going to talk a bit about the organizational roadmap. It's one of the toolkit's core guidance documents. This document provides a comprehensive step-by-step framework for the responsible AI adoption in your organization. It's designed to help agencies to build the necessary foundations before any AI system is deployed. This roadmap addresses 3 independent dimensions of the organizational readiness. The first one is organizational culture, the foundation. This means that it needs to establish the values, leadership commitments, trust structures, openness to feedback, that enable responsible innovation to take place and to be sustained. The second one is people and expertise, the capacity. Responsible AI requires diverse multidisciplinary teams, technical expertise in AI and data science, legal and human rights knowledge, governance and oversight capabilities, and social cultural competencies. When we got to have the AI toolkit, we took this very in attention. So we had the meetings with the different stakeholders, not only law enforcement, but all other actors like we have here in the peoples and expertise. So, and the third one is the processes, the systems. This encompasses needs assessment frameworks, stakeholder engagement protocols that you need to have in place, governance mechanisms, and continuous monitoring and evaluation of the AI systems. This roadmap is a safeguard against a risk we observe when we put in practice. Agencies that rush into implementation, deployment of AI before they take these foundations in consideration, they compromise the rights, the operational effectiveness, and mainly the public trust that is very important in our police work. The organizational readiness assessment is a structured self-evaluation tool. It's a questionnaire that is designed to provide an honest and comprehensive picture of where your police agency stands at the present moment in relation to responsible AI adoption. This assessment evaluates the readiness across three critical domains. First, governance and oversight, your leadership structures, accountability mechanisms, and policy frameworks. The second one, technical and operational capacity, your infrastructure, data management capabilities, technical expertise, and operational preparedness. And the third one, legal and ethical safeguards, your compliance with frameworks, human rights protections, and risk mitigation strategies that you need to have in place. The purpose of this tool is proactive rather than reactive. It can identify both the strengths that you have in your organization and also the gaps that must be addressed before the AI systems they are deployed in a regional or national level. A foundational concept within the toolkit is the AI system lifecycle. This comprehensive sequence of stages through which any AI system progresses from initial conceptualization to eventual decommissioning. Lifecycle has these 7 stages: planning and problem definition, data collection and preparation, model development and testing, procurement and development, operational use, monitoring and updates, and finally decommissioning. Risks and responsibilities, they exist in every of these 7 stages of the life cycle, not only during the deployment or the operational use. This is very important. Decisions that are made during the planning, they determine what problem the AI is designed to solve and whether the AI is even the appropriate solution, because sometimes you might have other solutions that don't pass by AI. Decisions made during the data collection determine whether the system will be fair and representative. Decisions that are made during the procurement, they will determine what transparency and accountability obligations a vendor is held to have it. While the full cycle has these 7 stages, the toolkit, it condenses them in these 4 key stages for practical application: planning, defining objectives, assessing feasibility, and ensuring ethical foundations are established from the outset. Then design, development, and procurement, because sometimes you develop in-house, sometimes you buy it from a vendor. So in this case, building or acquiring AI systems with appropriate safeguards, transparency requirements, and contractual accountability. And then use and monitoring. deploying the systems with human oversight and continuously evaluating the performance of the system, and fairness through the operational period of the implementation. And then finally, at one stage, decommissioning, retiring the systems responsibly in a responsible way. It's just not just turn off the button. You need to ensure that data security, knowledge transfer, and proper documentation of the decommissioning that took place. The toolkit dedicates significant attention to the risks that recur across the life cycle stages, because understanding the risks, it's a prerequisite for mitigating these same risks. The first one is bias and discrimination. AI systems, they can perpetuate or even amplify existing societal biases, and they will produce discriminatory outcomes against protected groups. And these risks is present from the data collection all the way through the operational use of the systems, and it requires a continuous vigilance. The second one is automation bias. Officers, they might overtrust the AI-generated recommendations, and they might fail to exercise independent critical judgment of the system. We're going to see that in one of the examples, particularly when the system appears highly accurate or authoritative. This is a direct threat to the principle of the human autonomy. The human must be always in the loop. The third one is lack of transparency. The black box systems that cannot explain their reasoning undermine accountability. When an AI system cannot account for its outputs, it becomes impossible to identify errors or to challenge decisions in legal procedures. This has serious implications for the justice. The fourth is weak monitoring, insufficient oversight mechanisms. They fail to detect performance degradation of the systems, emerging biases that might appear, or system misuse until after a significant harm has already occurred in a serious situation. And finally, is the fifth one is the vendor lock-in. Excessive dependency on proprietary systems. They can prevent agencies from switching vendors, negotiating better terms, or understanding how their systems actually reach out their conclusions, their results. The risk assessment questionnaire is one of the toolkit's 3 practical tools, and is one of the most operationally significant ones. The goal of this risk assessment questionnaire, is to identify and evaluate the risks to individuals and the communities that will arise if the 5 core principles that I talked before are not fulfilled in a given AI deployment. The questionnaire draws heavily in 3 principles as primary evaluative lenses: the minimization of harm, human autonomy, and fairness. In terms of timing, we recommend running this questionnaire at the earliest possible opportunity in all the life cycle of the AI project, and repeating it periodically throughout all the time, as systems they might evolve and change, and also the operational context they might change. So it's very important to take this risk assessment all the time. The questionnaire employs a clear quantitative methodology. Each risk is scored using the formula risk score equals impact multiplied by likelihood. Then each dimension is assessed independently and then combined, enabling the agency to prioritize the mitigation efforts and to make more responsible deployment decisions for the AI systems. So to bring these principles and tools to life, let's have a look at a concrete scenario that I think that many of your agencies may already be facing. The deployment of facial recognition technology at a major public event to identify persons of interest and enhance the public safety. Applying the 5 principles that I talked in the beginning, the most important ones in this scenario, we can apply them to this scenario, each one of the principles. On lawfulness, is there a clear and specific legal basis authorizing the use of the facial recognition system at this event? Does it comply with the applicable data protection legislation that we have in place and the constitutional protections? For the minimization of harm principle, what are the safeguards in place to prevent the misidentification of individuals? How will false positives be handled? What is the error rate? And critically, how does that error rate varies across different demographic groups? This is very important also. On human autonomy, do trained officers review and verify every AI-generated match before they take any other action? Are the officers explicitly empowered to override the system whenever they judge their judgment is different from the outputs the system provides? Then on fairness, has the system been rigorously tested for bias across the different ages, genders, and ethnic groups? Are accuracy rates demonstrably comparable across all these demographics? This is another question that we need to have. And finally, on good governance, is there a clear, accessible process for individuals to file complaints in case they have a false positive? Are independent audits conducted for the systems? Is the public informed that this technology is being used? This example, it illustrates why the toolkit is not only a bureaucratic exercise. These are the questions that determine whether a deployment is lawful, ethical, and operationally sound, or whether it carries the potential for serious injustice. I'd like to close my presentation with these 4 concrete next steps that I encourage you to take in your agency. The first one is to assess the toolkit. All the 7 resources that are freely available. I will share the link on the next slide. For free, no registration needed. You can use it as much as you want. The second stage is to run the readiness assessment before adapting or expanding the AI use. You need to identify your agency's capability and the gaps through this organizational readiness assessment questionnaire. Third one is to apply the risk questionnaire. For any AI system currently in operation that you have or under consideration, conduct this formal risk assessment using the toolkit's methodology. Fourth, and finally, the build a cross-functional team. This is very important. Even if you're in a law enforcement agency, responsible AI evaluation cannot rest with a single department. It requires the integrated expertise of legal, technical, ethical, and operational professionals working together. The toolkit provides the framework, and it's up to you to make it the responsible use of AI. So all the resources that are available for free at this website. You can scan the QR code. This is an interactive web page. You also have, if you go to the Interpol web page and you look for AI Toolkit, you also have all the resources, the 7 resources in PDF format. And yeah, this is all I have to say about the toolkit, and I'm open for the questions later on during the panel discussion. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Amazing work, very developed and accessible to everybody for free, so they have also the opportunity to enjoy it. And now we go to Nick. Nick, please let us know how the future is doing or is looking like. Thank you.
Sure. And to confirm, can you hear me all right?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. Bear with me for a second. All
And we
right.
see your presentation. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, and great to follow Antonio and Dan. Thanks to Berkeley, thanks to Interpol, law enforcement leaders on this call for holding this important conversation, and also for welcoming me to be part of it. We are really excited to have this conversation because I think as a company that's heavily focused on implementation of technology for public safety, I think the convergence of groups here to be very thoughtful as advanced technologies like AI start to transition into the public safety space. I couldn't imagine a more important discussion. So thank you. So a bit of a step back. So AI adoption is accelerating. Public safety is clearly under pressure to evaluate what's useful, what's responsible, what should be off limits. And as we all know, public safety is a very high consequence environment. The standard justifiably is higher for implementation of these technologies, higher than most industries. And that's why we at Peregrine appreciate the thought partnership of organizations like UC Berkeley's Criminal Law and Justice Center and Interpol. And we also appreciate the partnerships that we have with agencies and communities across the country. For context, we're working with about 450 diverse communities who deeply, deeply inform our approach to these questions. We as a company really believe in this principle of slowing down, especially when things are moving very fast. And today, I'd really like to share some reflections on what we at Peregrine have learned and are learning from our journey of integrating AI into how we help public safety agencies solve their hardest problems. And our ultimate goal is to deploy this technology in a way that is secure, that is safe, that breeds, at the end of the day, greater trust in public safety. And as we all know, this is a challenge. It's a challenge in general. It's a challenge in this moment. So really excited to be having this conversation. Okay, so headline message here: the effectiveness of AI in public safety is really not about whether AI is a powerful capability. It's about whether it can be trusted. And we believe that public concern is very real and it's very appropriate. And I think that should be the starting point and a substantial reason for this conversation to be happening in the first place. Some are surprised to hear that from a technology company, but we are very up close to this technology, living it, breathing it every single day. We have hundreds of engineers that are working with public safety agencies on data integration and transitioning their legacy infrastructure into a more modern and more secure approach. And so we can appreciate both the immense potential for impact and the ways it could fail public safety personnel and communities. So as a result of this, we've taken a cautious approach that's defined by principles that I'll discuss today. And we really believe principles that align with the key tenets of Interpol's AI Toolkit. Communities are asking the right questions, and a flavor of those questions look like: is it lawful? Is AI accurate? Who can access the data? Is our data being used to train AI? Can the system explain how it reached an answer? Can its use be audited? Will it strengthen public trust or undermine it? And it's up to every public safety institution to earn the public's trust every single day. And that's especially true when it comes to deploying AI. AI should really improve decisions, not just accelerate action. AI can obviously help agencies operate with greater speed, clarity, coordination, and accountability, but speed alone cannot be the measure of success. The real test is whether AI helps agencies make decisions that are more informed, more accountable, and more consistent with law and policy. And in public safety, responsible AI is not a slogan. It's not a policy statement. It has to be reflected in the product architecture that is deployed. It has to be reflected in the implementation model of that technology, in the governance controls, and in the daily user experience. This is often an enormous task. And in our opinion, the importance and the urgency when it comes to AI is less rushing to deploy it for operations, and it's more rushing to figure out how the product architecture, implementation, and governance should be designed so that it can be deployed safely. And importantly, and I'll get to this in more detail later in the conversation, trustworthy AI must be engineered for real operational conditions. Increased adoption of AI in law enforcement means that agencies need rigorous shared standards of evaluating technology. And I think Interpol's Toolkit is a really solid baseline that gives agencies a structured way to think about responsible AI adoption, not just whether a tool is powerful. So today I'll share with you ways that we've sought to deploy AI for the everyday conditions of our customers, public safety agencies, improving real operations, governing by agency policy, explaining outputs, supporting transparency, and supporting accountability. And I'll share some of the questions that we believe should be asked of all AI applications in public safety. I'll mention it in this conversation, and also happy to share follow-on materials afterward for those that are interested. Okay, so public agencies, we believe public agencies should be looking at these 4 principles when evaluating AI: privacy and security, accuracy, transparency and explainability, traceability, and auditability. And I'm going to go through each of these in turn. First, privacy and security matter because AI really cannot be trusted if the data it relies on is not protected, governed, and controlled. And communities cannot really trust deployments of AI when their data is put at risk. So AI should reinforce, not weaken, agency governance. It should not weaken an agency's existing rules for data access and use. It should reinforce them. And I believe that is possible. Why this matters: public safety agencies handle extremely sensitive data. I know I don't need to explain or belabor that to this group of professionals. But if sensitive data cannot be protected, the AI will never be considered trustworthy. So what we've learned through our deployments is that permissions and policy controls really must be built in to carry through to any AI application. That requires hard technical and engineering work. It requires development that goes far beyond merely deploying an off-the-shelf large language model or point solution. And critically, this means that the agency's data will remain the agency's data, controlled by them. I think this is a core principle, that every agency owns and controls their own data. Private companies, solution providers do not and should not control that data. That data belongs to the government, and that data belongs to the public. So what agencies should evaluate here? Who owns and controls the data? Is customer data used to train foundation models? Does the AI respect agency permissions? Can access be limited by role, purpose, policy, and data sensitivity? And how does the platform ensure agency data is accessed and used only for its intended purpose? Trustworthy AI begins with a basic commitment: protect the data and enforce the agency's rules. AI is really only as valuable as it is accurate. So this is a quick aside on accuracy. Point 2. AI must be reliable in real world scenarios. So accuracy in this context is really about measuring operational reliability. Trust in AI is built on accuracy, verifiable, and operationally grounded answers to questions. This really matters because public safety is fragmented. The data is very messy in many cases. And also, public safety is very mission specific. There are many roles and functions inside of a public safety agency. So when critical information and know-how lives across multiple siloed systems, formats, and workflows inside of a department, putting it together accurately requires the cleaning and connecting of that underlying data with a deep contextual understanding of that data before really AI can be deployed on top of it. And that data does not exist in a vacuum. The context matters so much. The same piece of information can mean different things depending on who's asking, why, and what decision they need to make. So what we've learned with the agencies we've partnered with on this is that AI must really understand the mission, not just the data. We've spent a huge amount of engineering development time incorporating our understanding and our customers' understanding of the mission into the deployment of AI. And that means considering their language, abbreviations, workflows, permissioning regimes, requirements of users, and so much more. When precision is required, AI needs to operate in context, and outputs need to be grounded in source data, constrained by deterministic logic, and monitored over time. So here, what agencies should really evaluate, in our opinion, is what is the AI's answer grounded in? What is the backbone through which AI is getting that answer? How can I see it? Can the system distinguish between source facts and generated language or opinion? Where are deterministic rules used instead of probabilistic inference? What happens when the system is actually uncertain? How does the system act? Can the agency evaluate performance of the system over time? Accuracy depends on more than the model, more than the LLM. Accuracy is not just a question of how the model performs in isolation. It depends on the data the system can access, the workflows it understands, the rules that constrain it, and the controls that monitor how it performs over time. And point 3, AI should support human judgment, not replace human judgment. AI in public safety cannot be a black box. In high-stakes environments like public safety, users should never be asked to trust AI on faith alone. Accuracy is not enough. Transparency and explainability keep humans at the helm of mission-critical decisions. And this really matters because human accountability requires verifiable outputs from AI. What that means is that AI answers to questions need to be traced back to the source so that people, the users of any system, can inspect, challenge, and verify those outputs. And that traceability needs to be provided in real time. This is what allows AI to support human judgment rather than replace it. What we've learned here is that AI really must be fine-tuned to produce the level of sourcing and reasoning that's required for public safety. We all may have experienced this, that AI can create an illusion of certainty sometimes. And without citing data or linking back to supporting evidence, our belief is that that output of AI cannot and should not be fully trusted. So source-linked explainable outputs help users verify results directly rather than relying on model confidence alone. And this capability is not available off the shelf for foundation models. It is not something that can be deployed overnight. We've needed to invest substantial engineering time to fine-tune these technologies and accommodate them for the needs and the very high standards of public safety. And realistically, every agency is different. The underlying systems and the way those systems are used are different. So this is not something to rush. What agencies should really be evaluating, in our opinion, is does the system show its work? Does the system show its work in real time? Are outputs linked to source material, underlying information? Can users verify the evidence directly? Does the system make uncertainty or limitations clear? And is AI assisting human decision-making, or is it quietly substituting for it? Again, these are critical questions that we are asking ourselves every single day. Our agency partners are asking themselves every single day. and happy to share more context or send this information if folks are interested afterward. Headline here, if users cannot verify it, they should not rely on it. This is a foundational belief that we have. In public safety, human accountability requires transparency. If an AI output cannot be explained, if it cannot be verified, if it cannot be traced back to source evidence, agencies should be very cautious about relying on it. Last point, public trust is built on a foundation of traceability and auditability. Responsible use of AI has to be provable. Public trust requires more than good intentions. Policies are important, but policies alone are not enough. Technology should make policy enforceable, reviewable, and auditable. This matters because policies need to be enforceable and reviewable in real-life, day-to-day operational practice. They need to be baked into these systems. The traceability and the auditability that is required of public safety is uniquely important for internal oversight, for policy enforcement, for compliance, for public accountability, and for public trust. And this is all possible. It is possible to do this. But what we've learned is that outputs and user actions must be traceable. They must be traceable at a very, very granular and detailed level. And as AI becomes more capable, more powerful, agencies must have visibility into how AI was used, what question was asked, what information the AI used, what answer it produced, what sources supported that answer, what the user of the system did next. And if auditability is treated as an afterthought, AI activity becomes much, much harder to govern after deployment. The other element of auditability that I want to highlight is it requires connecting multiple layers of the system. It requires user identity and permissioning. It requires data access. It requires source lineage. It requires AI prompts, AI outputs, the supporting evidence. It requires user actions, sharing, exports, and all of this in totality can comprise an exhaustive audit regime that will inform whether AI is properly used. So the questions that we believe agencies should evaluate here: what user actions are logged? Are AI interactions themselves logged? Can AI outputs be traced back to source material? Can supervisors review how the tool is being used? Can the system detect or flag unusual activity? And can audit logs support internal oversight, policy enforcement, and public accountability? Public trust requires proof. It is not promises. Proof, not promises. Public trust is built by asking communities to simply believe, by asking communities to simply believe the technology is being used responsibly. It is built through transparency, through giving agencies tools to prove that the implementation of that technology should be trusted. Takeaways to summarize: AI represents a major, major technological leap forward for all industries and for public safety, but it cannot be adopted casually. It has to be evaluated carefully. It has to be governed thoughtfully. It has to be deployed securely, monitored continuously, and grounded in law and policy. And conversations like this really matter because they elevate the right questions. The goal is not simply to deploy and adopt AI. The goal is to adopt AI in a way that improves public safety while deepening, not compromising trust. And the promise of AI in public safety is not just that agencies can move faster. It is that with the right foundations, they can make better decisions, they can operate with greater accountability, and they can deliver outcomes that communities can see, understand, and trust. Thank you. Thank you, Berkeley, for INTERPOL, for hosting this critical conversation and welcoming us at Peregrine to take part. And thank you to the law enforcement leaders on the front lines of deploying this new technology. We're very grateful for the pioneering leadership of this group.
Thank you very much, Nick, to show us how responsible AI is implemented in practice and developed. It has been a very interesting presentation and look forward to hearing more. This is exactly what the public looks forward to hearing and knowing from companies, how they are working, thinking about also their safety and trust. I will continue very briefly with the presentation of the work that UC Berkeley is doing to tie in all the expertise that we are learning from all of you. So I will share my screen now and make sure that I don't take too much time to show you briefly how our work is progressing. So, as you have heard, Chesa, we are trying to learn from the opportunities that AI is providing us and to learn also where systems fall short and build safeguards and checkpoints, help also society to understand better what opportunities are shared and how humans should, as we heard in all the presentations, not only kept in the loop, but actually have the driver's seat in these processes. What we also learned is that all these lessons should be shared. There is no local single agency, no vendor, no partner, no academic group that will actually get there alone, but we should all share this information together. So how we started working on this project, we started last year at the Larsen Justice Conference, where we made a meeting that was a breakpoint for future projects. What was different about this room? It was police, prosecutors, defense attorneys, technologists, policymakers, international partners, and community advocates that were not just sitting in the same room, but we were at the same table, having cross-sector conversations that in other environments you wouldn't see them happening. So what we learned from this meeting was that there was a real need to understand what was the need to develop a common vocabulary, common standards, and that we all needed to understand how AI was progressing so quickly and what we needed to actually get, information we needed to get to progress responsibly. How we started working, we couldn't fix what we couldn't see. So from the Larsen Justice Conference, we got a mandate to work forward on other projects. And we started building the AI law enforcement map. This map will provide us in different categories information on AI systems that are actually being deployed in the US. So we sort out these technologies, mirroring and working from the NYU, also policing project categories, surveillance and monitoring, predictive and risk tools, biometric identification, digital forensics, administrative tools, and also investigative and intelligence systems. So what we're getting the information is through transparency portals, public records, vendor disclosures, or scholarly and investigative records. How we are doing? We're doing well. So far, we have identified 60 products that are deployed across the whole area, the whole country. And we are now working on a prototype to display this information and make it public for everybody to simplify the landscape, to make it visible, and to provide the opportunity to develop policy and practice that can be grounded in fact and data rather than in assumptions. What we're also doing is assessments, policy assessments in different communities. So we have a concrete example. We were working on the AI reporting deployment for one of the localities. So what we learned from this locality was that we needed to provide them an assessment that was going to be looking into how this deployment was going to be working in their particular community. And what we wanted to be is constructive. So we needed to evaluate first the process that this webinar is all about, and then not to look only at the problems afterwards. So we learned 5 lessons from this first evaluation that we made. That is first test across communities, because as Dan mentioned, and also as Antonio and Nick also understood, is that the language models can carry bias, so validating the accuracy across the demographic groups and dialects upfront is what makes the tool fair and trustworthy. For a second, we also advise them to keep humans genuinely in the loop. These models can hallucinate or make misattributions, and the answer is that the officer has to have the opportunity to make a meaningful review rather than a rubber stamp. Third was also that there should be a way, there should be developed a technique to measure the benefit. The tools are offered as time savers, so the agency should be able to understand in which way this is going to be applied into practice and seen in practice by implementing, for example, a pilot program where they can track real metrics and understand that their decision will then follow evidence. Fourth, as also Nick was stating, a set of data rules up front, because audio and video are uploaded maybe sometimes to a vendor. Doing the work up front with the contract to develop a standard for agreeing on data segregation or retention, and the reuse limits by the contract keeps the legal context clear, and also creates trust with the community, and also understand the legal context. So clear disclosure, officer attestation, and sensible case that limit reports that are sound, and also keep the experience out of a litigation or court. What we need to understand is that there is the Interpol, for example, Toolkit, like Antonio was sharing, gives agencies exactly that kind of instrument that they do need to assess also risk. From there, a co-design pilot with a research partner, for example, build guardrails and also validate independently, and begin with a lower stakes incident will help to actually build up on the experience and allow the agency to make decisions with full information at the time. Additionally, we are working in aggregation to the mapping and the casework. We are seeing that there are some patterns that are showing up. So the opportunity to build safeguards is where we are focusing also as well. Transparency in the procurement, when vendors share specs and benchmark, the agency should take the opportunity to revise them, to understand them. Transparency also in the share evaluation bar. There should be independent pre-deployment testing instead of relying only on claims that are provided by the vendor. You should be able to also put this into practice. And strong data privacy standards. It looked like also we agree very much where Nick was providing this information. As this one is very important and big. Data minimization, retention limits, rich response, and also a real biometric protection should be in place. Cybersecurity measures should also be considered in advance in order to make sure that the agency keeps information safe and the community also trusts that their data is protected. And these just aren't questions that come up in the US. As for example, Antonio was sharing, facial recognition is something that already has been into question for many years. In the UK, the courts found that facial recognition was unlawful already in 2020, since it didn't have a clear legal basis, and also the bias risk was unassessed. And then also the same year, a Dutch court, I was living there then, and they struck down a government risk scoring system for breaching privacy and running it without any transparency. So in different countries, we're starting seeing the same gaps. It's something we are repeating, and that's why the Interpol system is so useful to everybody, and the same fixes. We are also working with the Council of on Criminal Justice 5 principles, and we have observed also that they really relate one-to-one almost to the ones that Interpol was presenting, that is providing systems that are safe and reliable, confidential and secure, effective and helpful, fair and just, and democratic and accountable. So you can see what is the closeness that also already the US with the task force that was from experts, coming from experts from different perspectives, could create a system that is actually relating very much to what Interpol is doing, is promoting, and is already supporting. What it is important to us is to frame what our center is doing and how we are creating collaborations and work together. The real opportunity in fragmentation, or in this fragmentation system that we're living in, could be to connect the actors who usually sit in silos. So we work across 4 levels. In general, we work locally with the city agencies that also provide us opportunity to liaise with the practitioner community. For example, we are working with the California Chief of Police Technology Committee and GovAI Coalition, where Commander Haley is engaged, and he is here today. We are also at the state level. We have been invited by the California Post to help develop its guidelines for law enforcement and AI. And nationally, through the AI and Justice Consortium, we are working to bring agencies, researchers, and partners together to build a shared understanding of these systems and how we can actually progress with more harmonization. And this brings us to coming full circle with Interpol internationally. We're working with to support the implementation of the toolkit here in California first, and of course throughout the US. And that's what we're planning, as Cesar mentioned, next year, training in person in California to support the actual in-practice implementation of this toolkit that is very comprehensive, and Antonio could only grasp the surface of actually the work that is done from the Agency for Law Enforcement. So I want to close my presentation to bring us back where we're here today, the opportunities we have mapped, understanding that these tools will help us also to build safeguards, to earn the public trust, and understanding also that it's not a Californian problem. We are not alone on this, and not even a US one. they're shared and they're everywhere. That's why Interpol Toolkit matters and gives us the opportunity to allow agencies to share a common vocabulary, structured ways to assess the risk, and also prepare for readiness tools that meets the agency where it actually is, regardless if it is a large or a small agency. We can put them into practice. So thank you very much for your presentation, for all the speakers. It has been a very comprehensive and learning opportunity for everybody. We are going to go now into the Q&A part, but if we are going to have a takeaway that you all have repeated, is that how to see it best is that these systems should work to support the thought process for people and not to replace the thinking of humans. Thank you so much for your help, for your presentations, and we are going to be able to now go to, we are actually running out of time, so I'm sorry, but we can, respecting all your times, if you're available, to have one question if there is an availability still from your side. Maybe if you would like to say a final conclusion from what you have heard from each other, that would be an opportunity now at this moment, and we can close the webinar.
I guess I'll jump in first since I went first, but I'll just say that, you know, like Nick said, the technology is moving fast and it is a good time to move slow. Trust is built up slowly over time, but could be eroded instantly. So we really have to keep that front of mind. With Interpol's human autonomy, we are the most important component of this system. And so I would say to build slowly, but then, you know, develop that trust as you go along and maintain the judgment and skill of your staff, and just use the technology as a tool. So.
Yeah, from my side, I'm very happy to see that all of the speakers already implemented some of the concepts that we have on the AI toolkit. So just remember that these 5 principles, they are very important in all the life cycle of a technology, and keep doing risk assessments. This is very important because the technology evolves and there might come some errors or stuff. It's very important to keep the AI systems working properly, to keep the police job effectively, and mainly to keep the trust from the public. That is very important too, so they trust the work that we are doing. And whenever you need have some question, you have my email, you can contact me. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
And to echo Dan and Antonio first, super grateful that this group is getting together. And from our perspective, the criticality of securely integrating and creating central governance and permissioning on top of agency-owned data is the precursor that empowers those agencies to securely implement tools like AI. And these technologies are very powerful, but I really don't think they should be rushed when thinking about implementation. And the implementation should be for very specific purposes. There is no general purpose solution. This is simply a tool, very powerful one, but one that is truly just a tool. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I will also agree with your comments and say that also we should request people in general, everybody, every actor and in the administration of justice processes to be more patient, because while we're taking the time to implement these technologies correctly, some mistakes are being done on the other side to rush the implementation of technologies without having the proper measures. So it's not only for us at this panel to remain conscious that a lot of work is being done and we need to do a lot more, but also to request patience from the community and the administration of justice people that need to also actors that need to be also keeping up with a little bit the safeguards that we need to implement. So thank you so much. We are going to provide you with a report also, and we're going to later on share that report with the participants. And we are very grateful that you took the time and the thinking to be here and to present something that was necessary for California and for the rest of the US and international public to hear. Thank you very much. We remain in touch.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.